Good evening and welcome to Moyo Talks. It is Wednesday night at 8 o'clock and we are here to serve you another weekly dose of wisdom and inspiration for your personal growth. My name is Mark Bind and I am your host this evening. And if I could just make a few announcements as we start. Firstly, if you want to use the chat function, you'll be able to communicate with the panelists and with Alexandra by just posting a message in the chat. Let us know how you're feeling. Let me put something in there now for you so you know where it is. On some phones, it's at the top of your screen, but on most computers and most phones, it's at the bottom of your screen. You'll see the chat function there. And why don't you put in the chat box now your favorite place in nature and where you are based. And just a useful exercise to think of your favorite place in nature. It's a useful grounding exercise. The other thing that I want to announce is the Q&A tab. Probably next to the chat button that you have just found or seen is the Q&A button, and you will be able to post questions for Alexandra into the Q&A tab, and at the end of her presentation, we'll have the opportunity to put those questions to Alexandra. Other than that, I just invite you to take a few deep breaths and bring yourself consciously into the space this evening, setting aside any distractions and just setting your intention on gaining the wisdom and learning the lessons that you need to learn this evening. So tonight we are fortunate to have Alexandra Lawrence with us. Alexandra is a personal development facilitator, a metaphysical mentor and writer who loves to see light bulbs going on for people. Metaphysics has always been one of her passions, even while studying for a science degree, and through all her years in the corporate world, she spent much of her free time investigating all things metaphysical. And there's always more to learn. In 2004, she formally began to study metaphysics at Metavarsity and subsequently taught there for many years. She now consults to Metavarsity on an ad hoc basis. Her work springs from the unusual combination of her need to understand things on an intellectual level, her intuitive sense of what's really going on, and her natural ability to see patterns and create structure and order from them. She's currently working on creating a course that explores how our soul and personality work together to fulfill our life purpose. She believes that when we operate from a deeper level of awareness and can appreciate the best in ourselves and others, we're able to make better decisions for our well-being, and life becomes infinitely more interesting and more rewarding. And with that said, I am looking forward to tonight's talk. Alexandra, if you can just unmute yourself and turn your camera on, and yeah, over to you.
Thanks very much, Mark. Thanks for the introduction and for inviting me on to speak. And welcome to everyone who's on the call. I'm very excited to be here. This is a topic that I have been thinking about and researching and working on for many, many years now. And I've finally got to a point where I've been able to put together some of the puzzle pieces so that it actually starts to make sense. I have, as you'll discover today, I'm an analytical person, amongst other things, but my analytical mind loves to make sense of things in a very logical, structured way. So that's the way that I've gone about this, and I'm very excited to share it with you. Let me start by sharing my screen, my PowerPoint presentation with you. Okay, so this question, what is life purpose? It's such a huge one. I know I've spent a lot of my life thinking about it, and I'm sure that many of the people on this call have too. I also think that right now, especially after this year, we have had even more opportunity to consider this, having been in isolation, many of us, and a lot more time on our own. Also, the planetary energies are encouraging us to think about this question, to consider what are our values, what do we really care about, what really matters, how do we want to spend our time, how do we want to spend our energy, and that really is what we're all supposed to be thinking about right now. So I'm very happy to be able to address this particular question. Now, of course, we don't know the final answer to this, and we won't until we pass away from this lifetime, by which time it will be too late to come back and tell everyone else unless we have a way to do that. But what I have gathered over many years of looking at this is a couple of things. We have really two major life purposes. And the first one that I have really solidified is this idea of growing into the best version of you. And by that, I mean you, not the best version of someone else, not the best version that someone else thinks you should be. Take all the shoulds out of the equation. It's the authentic best version of you, the highest version of you that I'm talking about here. And that is kind of made up of a couple of different things. So the first thing is about understanding what motivates you. So this is what gets you out of bed in the morning, what gives you energy, what encourages you to move forward. It's your internal driver in a way that is part of the best version of you. And when you understand what that is, you can tap into it and move forward much more easily. Another part of this is using our spiritual gifts. So spiritual gifts are our strengths. They're the things that come easily to us. I believe that our spiritual gifts, as well as the karmic lessons, which I'm going to talk about shortly, come from past lives. We often spend many lifetimes mastering them, and we bring them into this life as strengths that we can use, which is not to say that we can't improve them further, because we certainly can, but they are innate natural talents that we have. We also need, as part of this growing into the best version of ourselves, to work on our karmic lessons. And these are the things that we struggle with, the things that come up, the patterns over and over and over again that we find ourselves confronting in ourselves, especially if we're on a path of personal development. These things come up again, and often it feels like, oh, here it is again, again, and again. And it's just another layer of the onion. Or as I like to think about it, another viewpoint from the spiral path up the mountain. Looks like the same view, but you're seeing it from a higher level, which is always a good way to look at it when you feel like you're back again in the same situation. If we work on those things, using our gifts, understanding what motivates us, working on our karmic lessons, we will definitely be a long way towards growing into the best version of ourselves. The other big part of this equation is about making a positive difference in the world. And when I say this, I don't mean that you can only do this if you are Oprah or Bill Gates or Nelson Mandela or Elon Musk or Mother Teresa. You don't have to be a big famous person creating huge things out in the world. We all have the opportunity to make a positive difference in our own world, even if it's just about how we fine-tune how we interact with the people around us, our close, our loved ones, our colleagues, our friends, family, and every person that we come into contact with in the world. And even if it seems like a small thing, remember that the ripple effect is at work here. So as you shift, and you shift the way you interact with the people around you, that then spreads out in the circle. They shift the way they interact with the people around them. So there's this ripple effect that carries out into the world. So don't ever think that the difference you are making is too small. Every single little positive difference that you make counts. And it's all of those things that add up to make a better world for us. And we certainly do need that. So that's fantastic, all about using our strengths, contributing to the world, but what about us? What do we get out of this? Now, when I came across this particular piece of the puzzle, I was so excited because it really kind of pulls together everything that I had been cogitating on in my mind. And it comes from Martin Seligman. Some of you may know him as the founder of positive psychology. He does have a TED talk on the subject online if you'd like to go and have a look. And he talks about the paths to happiness and satisfaction. And he says there are 3 ways that we can actually reach happiness and satisfaction. The first one is pleasure. And yes, there is a reason it's 3 first. Some of you may have noticed that. I'll explain that just now. The first one I'm going to talk about is pleasure. So pleasure is all the things that make us feel good. Looking for positive experiences in the world, enjoying the physical world, enjoying our interactions with people around us, absolutely just making the most of every moment and having fun and creating a positive energy within ourselves. And there are many ways to do that. We all do that in different ways. The challenge with it is that some of us aren't actually so good at allowing ourselves to experience pleasure, but luckily there are ways that we can do that and better, and one of them is mindfulness, so about being present in the moment. Absolutely a big part of experiencing more pleasure. So present in the moment rather than in our heads or thinking about something in the past or planning something for the future, just being in the moment. And children are so good at that. Look at that picture of that little baby in the leaves. I mean, what a happy, happy, happy face. Children, we can learn from our children on this particular one. The second path is the path of engagement. So engagement is basically what it sounds like, being engaged with our lives. And that's our everyday lives. So that's all our work, our leisure, our interactions with our family, our friends, being there and being engaged. And the epitome, the highest point of engagement is what's known as flow state. Some of you may have heard that term. The flow state is when we are so engaged in the moment that nothing else exists. It's like time goes away and we are absolutely in that moment. And that flow state comes about when we are using our strengths and we just pushing ourselves a little bit, stretching ourselves a little bit is optimal flow state. And the sad thing about flow states is that we only realize we have been in it when we come out of it. The moment we think, oh, I'm in flow state, we pop out of it. But a fantastic space to be, and the more time we can spend there, the better. The first, and by no means last, path to happiness and satisfaction is meaning. And meaning is about using our strengths to make a difference in the world. So this is a really, really big one. And it's number one because it is, in fact, the most important thing. According to Martin Seligman, if you have pleasure in your life, that's going to give you some happiness and satisfaction. If you have engagement, it's going to give you a little bit more. But you can't have real happiness and satisfaction without meaning. And meaning ties so beautifully into this concept of what is our life purpose? What are we supposed to be doing here? And if you have meaning, engagement, and then finally pleasure is like the cherry on the top. Fantastic. Let's have all three of them, but definitely focus on the meaning because that's a big part of the equation. Okay, so to understand this concept of life purpose, what are we here to do? We need to go deep, and we need to go right deep down into our soul. So I'm going to speak about this from the perspective of the soul. And I personally believe in reincarnation because it's the only thing that makes sense to me. But if you don't, not to worry, you can just ignore the first little bit of what I'm going to say here. Everything else still applies. So no worries if you don't happen to believe in reincarnation. I'm just going to talk about it from that perspective. So as a soul, we are immortal and we have many, 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 many eons of lifetimes. And every lifetime that we choose brings us some new part of ourselves or helps us explore some new part of ourselves. So in a kind of more micro look at it, as we finish any given lifetime, we return to spirit plane. And there's lots of different theories about this. This is the one that I happen to subscribe to. Again, we won't know until we get there. But after our lifetime, we return to spirit plane. And we greeted there by guides and many other beings who can help us to, first of all, recover from that lifetime if it was a particularly difficult one. And then we spend some time reviewing that life and seeing what worked, what we did well, what we're happy with, and other things that didn't work or things that we wish that we had done better. And we basically try to wrap that lifetime up in a nutshell. Spend a bit of time in spirit world, doing whatever we do there, perhaps studying or researching or hanging out with our fellow soulmates. And when we're ready for our next lifetime, we then take everything that we have learned from all our previous lifetimes, and we sit down, usually again with our guides and other beings that are working with us, and we decide what do we want to achieve in this next lifetime. And the lifetime is very specifically chosen based on what we want to achieve. And there's kind of a bit of a funnel effect that happens. So we sit with our guides and we identify our goal. So our goal is about evolution and contribution. So evolution is about the ways in which we would like to grow, and contribution obviously about the way that we give back, the way that we make a difference in the world. So with that as our goal, we then very, very carefully choose every aspect of that life, starting with our personality, which brings with it inherent gifts and challenges. And as I mentioned before, I believe those often partly do come from past lifetimes. And that's based on, I managed to do this really well last time. Now, how can I improve on that? And these things I did really badly. Okay, let's bring them around again and have another go at them. So we choose our personality. We also choose our life circumstances. So by that, I mean the family we're born into. They say you can't choose your parents, but actually I believe that we do choose our parents and our children and everyone else around us. So our life circumstances are our parents, the family into which we're born, the culture, the country, whether we're rich or poor, everything that is to do with where we are actually, what we are born into, the circumstances that we arrive into. Then we add to that, going forward there, our life experiences. So again, this is, I believe that our major life experiences are actually almost like pre-chosen before we arrive. So the big things that are going to happen to us, we decide that already, way before we arrive in this planet, on this planet. And you can actually see that if you look at astrological charts or numerology or many other ways that you can look at your big life experiences. You can actually see those in your charts. Very often in retrospect, we see something big's coming, but we don't necessarily know what it is. And that's been the case with COVID this year. I mean, they saw, all the astrologers were saying something big's coming, but we didn't know what it was going to look like until it arrived. Same thing with our life experiences, big stuff, and we choose those before we arrive. Now we're in the life. We don't actually know what those exactly will be, but we can see glimpses in our charts. So our life experiences might include things like the people that we meet, the things that we study, when we move homes, when people we love die, when we start new jobs, what we learn from our jobs, big challenges that we are faced with, whether those are health, physical, emotional, mental, all those big things. Our relationships also sit in there. Those things all chosen beforehand. And then the final little piece of this equation is our response. And this is so important because we do have free will choice. We have these experiences, our circumstances, and everything chosen. We choose. Sometimes it feels like it's chosen for us, but we choose before we arrive on this planet. Our free will when we arrive on this planet is to do with our response to that, how we choose to actually deal with those things that we are given, which we chose again. So those things all added up, our personality, our life circumstances, our life experiences, and our response to those things lead to our final destiny. And our destiny is like the pinnacle of what we could achieve in this lifetime. We may not achieve that. We may choose not to respond in positive ways and rather evade and not quite get to our highest potential. That doesn't mean to say we won't move forward still, but this destiny is like our highest destiny. If we can get all of these things right, we should get to that point. So this equation is something that is obviously very complex. The little tiny bit that we're going to deal with today is to do with personality. And I'm looking at a very high level view of personality. So bear that in mind. There's a lot more gifts and challenges that we can go into if you want to work further with this, but high level version of the personality is what we're working with now. And bear in mind that it's a small piece of the equation. Another little piece of this here is that our soul chooses our personality, and our personality is actually made up of our physical body and our physical world around us, our emotional aspects. So some people are more emotional than others. We all deal differently with our emotions. And our mental body. Some people are far more logical and left brain. Other people are intuitive and creative. We all have different physical, emotional, and mental bodies. Those are chosen as part of our personality package, again, by us. All right, so let's dive into the personality energies. So there are many, many, many ways to look at personalities, and I'm sure most of you have come across at least some of these, possibly more. We have the more mainstream ones, for example, psychometric testing, Myers-Briggs, Enneagram. These are often found in more corporate settings. Then we have our more alternative ones, which could look like astrology, numerology, human design. All of those can tell us about our personality. And if you want to know about your personality in absolute depth, I highly recommend that you go and actually do some of those things. I've personally studied some astrology, numerology, and human design. I've done Myers-Briggs, I've done my Enneagram. You can learn so much in a huge amount of detail from those things. The tricky bit with those things is that often it's hard to remember them. It's hard to get a quick grasp on them. I mean, I've done my Enneagram. I couldn't tell you what number I was. I've also done Myers-Briggs. I know I'm INFJ, but I couldn't tell you exactly what that means. So I work with a really, really simple tool. And this is one that is a model adapted from David Merrill and Roger Reed. And it's made up of 4 personality energies: the driver, the analytical, the amiable, and the expressive. Now, I have worked with this model in corporates for many, many years. I've literally hundreds of people in groups and individually taken them through this particular model. And it is so easy to understand, so quick and easy just to grasp, both for yourself, to understand yourself, and to understand other people as well. One of the really amazing things about this particular model is that when you understand what drives other people, it actually makes you more tolerant towards them, and it helps you to communicate with them. And I normally teach this in corporate as a way of learning how to communicate with different kinds of people. I don't think I've ever used the word soul in the corporate environment, but I have now taken this and I have adapted it. This is by no means a spiritual tool, but I have adapted it to a more metaphysical and spiritual tool, because that is where my passion actually lies. So I'm using this model, but in my own way as we go into it. And I'm going to take you through each of the different energies. Very important to know, we are all made up of all these energies in different proportions. So if you had to do a questionnaire, and if you do want to work further with this, I do have a questionnaire to work with. It'll tell you how many out of 10 or out of 30 or whatever you want you are driver, how much analytical, how much amiable, how much expressive you are. And everybody will have different numbers. The other thing here is that even people with the same numbers are not going to be identical people, because remember, this is one little part of the big puzzle, the whole equation of the soul and everything else, that choices that we make. But people with the same numbers will have certain fundamental things that are similar across their personalities. So I'm not here trying to put anyone in a block and saying you are this. I'm saying here's how the mix of energies work together. I'm going to tell you about each of the individual energies separately, but we are a mix of all of them. Also important to note, none of these is better or worse than the other. They all have pros and cons to them, and we need all of them. They all kind of make the world work in different ways. We need all of this for the world to actually turn properly, for society to function. We need all of these types. They all have the pros and the cons. I always like to liken it to like Star Wars. So the energy is neutral. So think of the force in Star Wars. The energy is neutral. You choose how you want to use it. And you can be Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader and use the same energy, but in different ways. And everything is on a continuum. So for example, if you were Luke Skywalker, you might call a particular energy, other people might call a particular energy determination. But if you were in your Darth Vader persona, you or more likely other people might call that particular energy stubbornness. Determination and stubbornness are the same energy. It's just about how they're used. So as I'm talking through them, I'm going to talk a little bit about the pros and the cons of each of the energies, what they're good at, what they struggle with. And as we're going, see if you can recognize yourself and start to also recognize the main energies of other people in your lives, because that's one of the best ways to see it. Sometimes we're in denial about them, the energies in ourselves, but we can easily see them in other people. And that's sometimes the easiest way to understand them. So think about yourself and think about other people. Okay, so I'm going to just start with the grid. Just one moment, we'll have a sip of water. Okay, so this is our grid on which everything fits. And we start out with the introvert-extrovert axis. Now, introvert-extrovert is very much a scale, and you could sit on either side or somewhere in the middle of this. The easiest way I find to identify the difference between introverts and extroverts is that introverts like to recharge on their own. Extroverts like to recharge around other people. So on a difficult day, after a difficult day, the introvert is likely to go home. And if there's anyone at home, they're likely to say, just quiet, leave me alone. I just want you to lie on the couch, pull the duvet over my head, maybe with a cup of coffee. I just need some quiet space to restore myself. And after a little while of that, the introvert feels better. The extroverts, after a very hectic day, will not go home. They're likely to go straight to visit friends or the local pub or whatever it might be. And all they want to do is be around people and tell everyone about how awful their day was. And then after a little while of that, they feel better. So this is important to understand where you sit on this scale, whether you're introvert or extrovert, because then you can give yourself what you need. If you are an introvert and you don't have enough alone time, you are going to be very stressed. And if you're an extrovert and you don't have enough time around other people, you are going to be very depressed. So when you know where you sit, you give yourself what you need. And if you sit towards the middle, which is where I sit, then you need to ask on a moment-by-moment basis, what do I need right now? Do I need time to myself? Do I need time around people? And just having that in mind and working with that question could make a major difference in your life. So you can first identify for yourself where you sit on that particular axis. Our other axis is the logic or tasks axis and the emotional or people axis. So people who are task focused are usually extremely logical. They're all about getting things done. And their main priority is always going to be getting it done. They will go first to logic before they will go to emotion. If you are more on the emotional people side, you are all about connecting with people. That will always be your first priority. Tasks come after that. You're also more likely to be more emotionally driven and make your decisions from that point of how I feel rather than what I think, which is the logical way of approaching things. So that is the axis on which we are sitting right now. Let's talk about the driver. So the driver energy is, I always call it's like yang energy. For those of you who know the yin-yang concept, driver is like yang. They're all about results. They have a goal, and that is their primary thing that drives them forward is, I want to reach this goal. A driver without a goal is very sad, is very depressed, doesn't work well. A driver always needs a goal to head towards. They're about achieving that goal, getting the results. But they don't really care how it's done. So they tend to come from a big picture and a bottom line perspective. So the how it happens in the middle, not really their concern. What they should be doing is delegating. So holding that vision of the goal and then delegating the process in between to other people, which we'll talk about who those other people are shortly. But big picture, bottom line is the way that they approach the world. About action. The little Nike tick that says, just do it, that is a driver's slogan, just do it. Do it and we'll worry about the consequences and any fallout afterwards. Just move, do it. So there's a sense of impatience that comes with that. And the currency of the driver is power. They always want to be the most powerful person in the room. Anything that challenges their status or that makes them lose face will cause a very negative reaction. So for them, they like to be seen as in control, in power, and they like people to do what they say. So often for them, it's their way or the highway. This personality energy is high in the leaders of the world. So these are the leaders. These are your leaders of big companies, your CEOs, your MDs, your leaders of anything. And that could range from companies to church groups, to organizations of any kind, to families. These are the people who are in charge in the family, and everyone knows that they wear the pants. They carry that leadership energy, and done well, they can really uplift and inspire people, lead people forward with the vision, and get people to move and operate on their behalf to achieve their goal. Fantastic leadership energy. When we can think of someone who is like Nelson Mandela was very gentle. So not all drivers like, but he got stuff done. Another person who gets stuff done is someone like Richard Branson. He's a classic example of a driver. He's got a lot of other energies as well, but he uses his driver energy. He says, right, I want to start an airline. And then he doesn't do it. He holds that vision and the big picture and the bottom line, and he hires the best people in the world to do that. And they do that. And he just keeps an eye from this big picture level. Driver energy used well. Another very high driver is Oprah. She also uses hers really well to uplift, to inspire, to get things done, sets goals, moves towards them. She knows how to use that energy. On the flip side, because there's always, that's the Luke Skywalker version I've just given you. The Darth Vader version of this is the intimidating, dictator, arrogant, power-hungry, egotistical, my way or the highway, not interested in anyone else's point of view, will walk over anyone to get to their goal. Can be extremely intimidating to everyone else. And people often avoid drivers who use the energy negatively. So it's like the unevolved driver. The evolved driver uses it correctly. The unevolved Darth Vader driver uses it incorrectly. And as a result, people are scared and they often avoid this person. So interesting to note, they sit on the logic task side. They are all about getting things done. And they sit on the extrovert side because they need people to do stuff for them. They need people around them to do stuff for them. Minions. Drivers need minions. Okay, from our driver, we move on to our analytical, who's still on the logical task side. So still about getting things done, but very, very differently. On the introvert side, you'll notice the analytical energy is all about getting it right. They are accuracy to the smallest detail. Their currency is information. Analytical can never get too much information, and they are excellent at pulling information from different sources and putting it together into something that makes sense, looking for the patterns. They're all about the details, and sometimes they can get so stuck in the details that they forget about everything else, but they love details. If anyone asks you more about something, like, tell me more about this, why, how, when, those are all analytical questions. They tell you that person is about the details. And processes are their forte. So they are, if you say, we need to do something, they will then, this is what the driver says, let's achieve this. Then the analytical will say, okay, if we want to achieve this, this is what we need to do. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, and they'll work out all the processes and all the steps that are necessary along the way to make that happen. Brilliant at processes. They are very much in typically analytical type of roles. So you'll find your accountants, your forensic people, your doctors, your nutritionists, your homeopaths, your IT techie guys that fix computers, your coders, your developers. All of those people deal with details as part of their currency. So it's all about understanding the details and putting it together to find the problem. They are excellent at finding the problem. which is absolutely fantastic when it's used correctly. They will find the problem, and if they use the energy correctly, they will solve it. The problem comes when they're on the unevolved side, the Darth Vader side, is that analyticals that are not using the energy well can end up being hypercritical, glass half empty all the time. They will find the problem and then they will nitpick and they will stop there and they won't try to solve it. They'll just say, this is wrong. No, this won't work because no, that's not going to happen. Can't do that. No, never work. Negative, 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 because they're so good at seeing the problem. And if they just shift that energy, they can then shift that into finding the solution. But some actually don't shift into that higher level. And they're just about the negative side of everything that's wrong with the world. They can also, as I mentioned, get so stuck in the details that they lose sight of the bigger picture. And as a result, they can take very, very long to do things. If you want something done right, give it to the analytical because they'll double check it 4 times before they give it back to you, but they'll take very, very long. If you want it done quickly, give it to the driver and they will give it back to you very quickly, but they won't necessarily have checked all the details. And that's how decision making happens as well. Drivers make very quick decisions and then deal with the fallout later. Analyticals must check every little part of that information before they actually move forward, before they give you any information back. Okay, so analyticals, fantastic energy, depending on how you're using it. Now we're swapping down to the bottom part of the graph, which is by no means less. As I said earlier, there's none of these is better or worse than the other. We need all of these types. The next type is the amiable, on the emotional side, on the introvert side. So amiables are, always like to think of them as the mother energies of the world. So they are all about relationships. They want everyone to be happy. These are the people that will let you cry on their shoulder when you have a bad day, will make a cup of tea, will ask you how you are, will actually notice how you are. Nobody else will notice how you are. These are the people that will notice if you had your hair cut, if you're pregnant and you haven't told anyone, if you're having an affair, anything that they are super, super sensitive to everything going on around them, and they are excellent at observing body language, noticing tone of voice. They always know. If you want to know what's going on in an office, ask the amiable. They will know. They are the glue that holds society together. In fact, they're perhaps the only glue. They are the ones that kind of the only people really that care about other people. The only energy, let's not say that, only people. The people who are high amiable care about other people. And they want everybody to be happy. They want everyone to work together in cooperation. They want people to be harmonious, and they hate conflict as a result. So they will do everything they can to resolve and to try to facilitate an amicable solution. They are also super, super sensitive, as I mentioned. So they are sensitive to what's happening around them, and they are sensitive to how you interact with them. So they can take things very personally, and that is the flip side of the amiable. They like the nicest people, the most loyal. If they like you, they will do anything for you. But the flip side of the amiable is that they're often so busy taking care of everyone else that they forget about themselves. And then what happens, I always imagine we've all got an internal well of resources within us. And if we give and we give and we give and we just exhaust that well, we get to a point where we just empty. And an amiable who has given and given and given and given gets to a point where their well is empty, and then it's like a switch flips and they turn into passive aggressive or victim, poor me. I always spend so much time helping everyone else and nobody wants to help me. Nobody's even noticing that I'm been sad today or that I'm struggling, and that's the poor me. And the passive aggressive side is I'll speak nicely to your face, but behind your back, I will stab you in the back. Or I'll say, yes, I'll do that, and then I just don't do it. That's the passive aggressive side. So an amiable that is basically burnt out flips into that passive aggressive or victim role. Very important though, glue that holds society together. On the introvert side, because they need alone time, because the only time they're able to think of themselves before everyone else is when they are alone. So one of the biggest learning curves of the amiable is to learn to say no, to give themselves that time, and to maintain boundaries, because it's very, very hard for the amiable to say no. They need to maintain those boundaries. All right, and our last type here, or second to last type actually, is our expressive. So our expressive energy is exactly what it says. It's all about expressing, and expressives often express quite loudly. They're the ones that you'll hear on the other side of the house when they're speaking. But not all of them. Some of them are actually quieter, but they express in other ways through art or music. I've met several expressives who you won't hardly get a word out of, but they make beautiful music or beautiful art. They are all about creating stuff, incredibly creative, incredibly sort of out of the box thinking. And they thrive on recognition. So they want people to see what amazing things they're doing. They want people to acknowledge them. They are very comfortable in the spotlight, very comfortable as the center of attention. And they also are so all about the wow factor. So everything needs to be new and exciting for them. They love that. If you want to get their attention, you have to grab it with something new and exciting. These are the artists, the stage entertainers, the radio presenters, the graphic designers who also work with art in a slightly more structured way on a computer. Anyone in a creative design agency, a lot of PR people are like this. That expressive energy is well expressed in that kind of space where they can be in the spotlight and can make things exciting. The flip side of the expressive, however, is that they can very easily turn into a drama queen. When they're not the center of attention, they don't like it. So they will very often do anything. It's like a child who wants attention. If they're not getting positive attention, they will throw a tantrum to get negative attention. So as long as they're getting attention, they don't care what kind of attention it is. Positive is better, but negative is better than no attention. A colleague of mine often says, expressives, at a wedding, they want to be the bride. At a funeral, they want to be the corpse, just as long as everyone is looking at them. And that's the case for many expressives who are very high expressive. And it can be quite exhausting for people around them, that drama queen kind of effect, where every little molehill becomes this massive mountain at full volume, and usually with hands going and all sorts of expressive things that happen as well. It can be quite exhausting for people around them, but a very entertaining energy. If you want to have an incredible party, go with an expressive, spontaneous, brilliant at thinking up excellent ideas of things, exciting things to do. I've just realized I didn't mention for the amiable the kinds of careers that they have, the kinds of things that they do. They are usually in support roles or people-related roles. So you find nurses, psychologists, teachers, any support role, PA, VA, anywhere where they love supporting people. They love helping and making people feel better. So that is big for the amiable. That's where you're going to find that kind of energy. So we can see that each of these types has particular gifts and particular things that they don't do so well. We also have a combo, and the combo I call the chameleon, and the chameleon is a combination of all these energies. So I'm a chameleon myself, and so I'm primarily analytical. Chameleon is when if you have to do a questionnaire out of 10, for example, you might have your numbers as 10, 9, 8, 7. They're all very closely linked to each other. That is a chameleon where you have all the energies within you, which has its pros and cons as well. Most people are polarized either to analytical driver side or the amiable expressive. Some people are analytical amiable, some people are expressive driver. They're often polarized to one side or the other, or they have one particular one that's very strong. The chameleon has all of them. So example, in my profile, I'm 10 out of 10 analytical, driver 9 out of 10, amiable 8 out of 10, and expressive 6 out of 10. So I have all those energies, which, as I mentioned, has pros and cons. The great thing about being a chameleon is it makes you highly adaptable, highly flexible. It means that you can work with all different kinds of people, do a whole bunch of different things. It's the multitasker, the kind of person who is a jack of all trades. Fantastic energy. And in fact, all of us can move a little bit more towards chameleon by building up the parts of ourselves that aren't so strong. So chameleon is certainly a fantastic thing to be, but the other side of it is that all these energies within us are, as a chameleon, are competing for attention. And it's like having 4 voices in your head all wanting to be heard at the same time. And the example I always use for this, because it's a real life example that has happened to me not once but several times, is very simple example. I'm on my way to the gym and I'm thinking, oh, do I really want to go? And the driver in me goes, just go. And the analytical goes, yeah, you've already been twice this week. Statistically speaking, that's kind of enough. And the amiable goes, oh, if you go, you can go and check out the people, see who's there, chat to some people. And the expressive goes, somebody just make a decision. And while this conversation is happening in my head, real life example, I'm going round and round the roundabout outside the gym. I think I went round that roundabout 3 or 4 times. I don't know what the people behind me thought, but that is a classic dilemma of the chameleon, and that all these sides want different things, and resolving them can sometimes take a bit of effort. And a quick tip that I have for you there, if you are a chameleon, is you need to decide before you go into any situation what energy you want to use at any given time before the case. When you're actually in there. When you're in there, it's almost too late. So before, if you're going into a party, you take your amiable expressive sides. If you want to make a quick decision, you go with your driver. If you want to make sure it's done properly, you choose to work with your analytical energy. You need to choose beforehand. But if you get it right, it gives a lot of adaptability that works with that. Fantastic. I hope that all makes sense. So very high level overview. And each of these you can go into so much more detail on. And again, remember, this is just one small part of the equation. If you're interested in finding out more, you can choose to work with me. I'll chat just now about that. One little last question for you, just to make you think. Which are you? Are you a brilliant problem solver or a critical nitpicker? That is the analytical energy at work here. Are you an inspired leader or a destructive dictator? That's the driver energy. Are you a caring nurturer or a people-pleasing doormat? That's the amiable energy. Are you a sensational superstar or an annoying drama queen? That's the expressive energy. And often we're a combination of all of these. Just a question of which side are you on. Are you a master of all trades or a burned out Jack or Jill, which is the chameleon energy, trying to fulfill and accommodate all these voices? It leads to burnout. So big question. I invite you to think about those. As I mentioned, each of these types has its higher energy and its lower energy. It's more evolved, it's less evolved energies. Another friend of mine calls them the sticky side and the smooth side. So the sticky side is the side that can get you into trouble. The smooth side is where you're using all your energies correctly. Very importantly, as we start to move towards the highest version of ourselves, as we start to become more of the blue energy on the slide, our problem solvers, our inspired leaders, caring nurturers, sensational superstars, as we move more towards that and deal with the stuff that's keeping us often in our negative sticky side, the red side on this slide, we literally start to move towards the highest version of ourselves, and our life purpose begins to unfold. We begin to see more clearly what it is that we should be doing. And last words from me. You being you is the most powerful thing you can do to change the world. You can't be anyone else. You just need to be the best version of you. Work towards that and know that doing that, being you, it's not even about doing, it's about being, because the doing flows out of the being, is the most powerful thing that you can do to change the world. And the world needs the person you were born to be. the highest version of that. Okay, thank you very much. Oh, I went a little bit prematurely into this. Mark, would you like to? That's all I have to say. I don't know if you want to move into that, or if you've got questions. Should we go into questions first? I'm not sure how you'd like to deal with it.
Well, let's go into the Q&A, and then we can go to the prize after the Q&A. So if anybody has any questions, please type them into the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get an opportunity.
I'm just reading some of the chat already.
When did your light bulb moments about your purpose happen for you in this lifetime?
Sorry, can you just repeat that?
When did your light bulb moment for your purpose happen for you in this lifetime?
It's been a gradual process for me personally, and part of that is kind of looking back, and again, it's another part of the process, but looking back over years of things, I started to realize that I've always been a teacher. Even when I wasn't a facilitator formally, I was teaching. When I was a child, I liked to play teachers. When I was working in corporate and doing project management, I would teach people around me how to do things. And then when I became a teacher, I left corporate world, I taught all sorts of different things, and I realized that my passion is to do with metaphysics and personal development and self-awareness. So it's kind of been not a click moment, but an ongoing process of uncovering that. But I do believe that when you look at this when you do this kind of work and you look in enough depth at all the parts of the equation, that it is possible to have some major light bulb moments from that.
Okay, great. So I think your presentation was quite thorough, because we don't seem to have any more questions. But I'm interested to know, what other services do you offer for clients? Like, how can they contact you, and how can you help them?
Great. Let me just move to a slide on that for you. Oh, I stopped my. There we go. Are you seeing the slide?
Not yet.
Let me just see. I'm not sure. I need to share it. Sorry. Go back to that. Okay, so what I'm offering at the moment is personalized sessions for individuals. So particularly around personality stuff, but I'm starting to add more of the soul purpose thing, although that's a much bigger process journey. But personalized sessions for individuals, basically to help you understand yourself better. So understand how these energies play, because as I mentioned, we're not only one of these things, we are a combination of these different energies. And when you understand where you sit in that combination, you can then look in detail at what are the strengths of this, what are the potential things, the sticky side that I might struggle with, and how can I move more from this side, that's the struggle side, to the more evolved side of that. So certainly individual sessions and joint sessions, when you work with this together with somebody else, it's so enlightening. I have done this with many people, two people together, and in bigger groups, teams. And when you see how the energies interplay, and then you can kind of say, okay, so this person should be doing this, this person should be doing this, this person should be doing this in the particular team. It really gives you a sense of the dynamic of the team, and it brings a sense of, I want to say, respect and tolerance, because when you understand someone else's strengths and the things that they struggle with, it brings a kind of a different perspective, because we think people should be like us. We think everyone should be like us, but they're really not, and they're not supposed to be. And the more we can understand that there's all these different people in the world, and none of them can be put in a box. We're all a mix of all these energies and all our life experiences and choices, everything that comes before that. But when we have some glimpse of the other person and their power and the things that they struggle with, it really helps to kind of people ready to work better together with more respect and more tolerance, understanding what different people are struggling with. I also am in the process of doing a test run right now with a small test group on my course, which is finally all the puzzle pieces coming together for me. where we're looking at personality, we're looking at soul, we're looking at life experiences and choices, and throwing in a little bit of astrology in there to start to understand what our soul has been preparing us for, because that's really what our lives are. Our lives are our soul learning and growing, working through the choices that we've made before we even came here, but moving us, almost like funneling us towards our highest purpose, so that we can begin to see what that is. And we might not see, boom, the whole thing in Technicolor, but the more we understand this, we can start to move more and more towards what we should be spending our time on, where we should be putting our energy, and then working on the things that are our strengths, and also working on that more shadow side that we often ignore, because if we don't work on the shadow side, it chips away quietly at all our things that we could be achieving, and it just kind of sucks the sap and the power out of it. So it's important that we look at our strengths, but also the things that could potentially derail that. So that course is in test phase at the moment. I think it's probably going to be the end of the year is not a great time to start. So probably in the new year, but I'm very interested if you would like more information about any of these, if you'd like to work with me further, or if you'd like to basically be on my database to be informed when the course starts, and then I will certainly let you know when that is ready to go, and I have dates and more information about how that's all going to work.
Great. Thank you very much, Alexandra. So before we go to the giveaway, there's one interesting question here from Carla. Due to a recent trauma, it shook my spiritual belief and had a big impact on my driver's side. I'm a chameleon. How can one activate the driver again?
I would guess, I'm guessing now because I don't know the exact circumstances, but I would guess that the trauma, again, remember that you choose it. You chose that circumstance, even though it's really hard to believe sometimes. We would choose these horrible things that happen to us. Our soul does actually know what it's doing, and it often helps to remind ourselves of that. So I'm guessing that because it's the driver's side that's been impacted so much for you by this trauma that's happened, that it's your soul saying to you, you know what, maybe it's time to step back from driver a little and look at the other skills that I have. You say that you are a chameleon, which is fantastic. That means that you have access to those other energies, the analytical energy, the amiable energy, and that expressive energy, regardless of how much of each that you have. The opposite to the driver is, so if you look at the grid, or think of the grid, because you're not going to go back and look at it now, but the opposite to the driver is the amiable. So if your driver has been derailed, I guess your soul is saying to you, you know what, enough driver now. Focus on your amiable. And your amiable is about looking at your emotions, how you're feeling, being soft and gentle and nurturing for yourself, being kind to yourself, really giving yourself space to allow that sensitive part of you to be heard, because the driver tends to squash it down like this because it doesn't want to hear that mushy stuff. And if your driver's been in control for a while, your amiable might be going, it's time, and therefore your soul derails your driver. So that would be my recommendation. Look at your amiable energy and how you can be softer, kinder, gentler, mother yourself. Look at your own inner child and work with that for a while. And when you've done that, you might well find that your driver energy comes back online. Does that help at all?
Great. I think that's a great answer. Thank you very much. Let's go to the giveaway, Alexandra. How are we going to do that?
Okay, so fantastic. Thanks, Carla. Glad that helped. All right, so I was going to have a slide, but we don't need a slide. You can just type in. So what I'm giving away is a 1 hour individual session with one person who will be the winner. And that will be what I spoke about, the personality energies, understanding your energies and how it works, how they work together, how you can make the most of them. With that also, and how you can deal with the shadow side stuff as well. With that also comes insight into other people. So as you start to understand these energies more, you get insight into the people around you. And we can throw into that session where your family members and your close loved ones sit, to help you to understand that and to understand how to communicate a bit better with them. Because if we want to communicate well, we need to understand where the other person is coming from. So this session is about you, but we'll also throw in a little bit about how your family and everyone else fits around you. So yeah, 1 hour session. It would be on Zoom at this point. And the first question, the first person to answer will be, will be the winner. The question is, what are the 4 personality energies called? What are the 4 personality energies?
And if the people can please type that into the chat box,
yes,
we'll see them all coming up.
Ooh. Wow, okay, looks like Lisa's the winner. That was quick. Someone was taking notes. Am I right?
Right.
Is it Lisa?
Yeah, so Lisa, if you can just send us an email to talks@moyocenter.com, and we will get that. We'll get you in touch with Alexandra tomorrow.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Mark. And I will send out just a follow-up email with my details and everything in the next couple of days. So if anyone is interested in working with me in other ways, just with individuals or wants to put their name down for the course or with teams, you're more than welcome to contact me. Thanks very much. Thank you for your time and your attention, everyone. And I'm so glad if it was helpful.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alexandra. That was very interesting and very helpful. And I knew what to expect because I got a sneak peek of the slides yesterday. So I knew what to look forward to.
In fast motion.
Thank you very, very much. I see there are lots of thanks coming through on the chat. For those of you who are interested, next week we have Sabine Thomas. Sabine is a French citizen living in South Africa who is a healer. She's going to be doing a group healing in the session. We'll also be hearing from some people who have experienced her process and have learned her process, including a medical doctor, if I'm correct. It looks like we'll have some interesting people on that. So it's really Sabine and friends, but that is next week, Wednesday at 8 o'clock. I look forward to seeing you online.